Covering, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Ben-Nun Institute of Biblical Research. And I know it's been some time since we really had a chance to speak with you guys here. Been extremely tied up with trying to get caught up on the programs that need to be put out on World Harvest Television Network. And that's something you might want to check out as well. On DirecTV Channel 367 airs all across the United States every Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and of course 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Definitely check it out. We include a lot of our teaching insights that the Holy Spirit is so kind to show to us here on this particular channel, because Israeli News Live, being only a once-a-week program, takes and combines the efforts of Ben-Nun Institute, our research end, as well as what's going on in the news, and connecting those dots prophetically. This coming week's broadcast, this coming Saturday night, we're going to be looking how the Middle East situation is going to set the stage for the coming of the two witnesses. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. People believe there's Elijah and Enoch, Moses and Elijah, Elijah and John, and of course there's the big argument about Hebrews 9, it's appointed unto man once to die. And so often they don't believe that Moses could be one of the witnesses as a result of that. Go back and read Hebrews chapter 9. You find out. And I'm not one to single out a verse and say that you're wrong for doing it, because that would not be fair when we know that Jesus did the same. Isaiah 61 verse 1, half of verse 2 is a good example of that. Why? Because the other half of verse 2 didn't apply for another 2,000 years. But in the case of Hebrews chapter 9, it is important to see a little bit more of what's being stated, because Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed to man once to die, and after this the judgment, specifically speaks about the verses just above it, and the fact that Yeshua, or Jesus, was coming only to die once. He wasn't going to come to die over and over and over. And anthropos, the Greek word that is used there, is for a human being. For this man, this one man, this man that we made human, God himself made human, coming down and dying for the world as a sacrifice for sins. So he wasn't to die over and over and over. So in this case, it really has nothing to do with Moses as a possibility of being one of the two witnesses. And the fact that I argue as well, both Moses and Elijah have a very unique witness to begin with. Moses, of course, met God face to face on the backside of the desert. He's a witness to what the law of Israel should actually be. As Malachi points out in his own prophecy about Elijah, he throws in Moses. Remember you, my servant Moses, and the commandments and statutes that I commanded him on where? Mount Horeb, not even Mount Sinai. Why? On Mount Horeb is where the 10 commandments were given and the 2 statutes with it. And God said he added no more. You find that in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, Mount Sinai, we get 613 Levitical laws that come out, and we know that even Jesus opposes some of those Levitical laws that came out of Mount Sinai. As he states, you have heard it said of them of old time, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, if he ask you of your coat, give him your cloak. If he smites you on your cheek, turn to him the other. See, totally a difference there. And he does this on many of the different laws that we have in the Levitical laws, we call it 613 laws there. So Moses is a witness to what God's will and plan was for Israel back 3,600 years ago. And that's why I believe he is one of those witnesses. And as we also point out in this special broadcast here, the prophecies that he's never fulfilled. Exodus chapter 34, he's never done the greater wonders that God said he would do. Even after the parting of the Red Sea and all the plagues of Egypt, he said he would do wonders like he's never done before with Moses. All right, and then we have the fact that he says he'll sing the song that he's gotten victory over the horse and his rider, the Antichrist. One horse, one rider, not the 600 that are laying in the bottom of the sea right then and there. And of course, Elijah. You might say, well, what was Elijah a witness of? Well, Elijah was a witness of the ministry of Yeshua. He's the witness of the dove coming down upon Jesus. Now, some might say, no, that was John the Baptist. But Jesus says, when they ask him this question, doesn't the scripture say that Elias must first come, which is Greek for Elijah? And he says he's already come. Wow. They understood it to be John, but notice what he says though. Truly Elias shall first come and restore all things. What all things? I thought Jesus was to restore all things. Well, he did. But the problem is there's no witness to the fact of what Jesus said back 2,000 years ago, except through that of John the Baptist or Elijah in this case, inside of him, the spirit of Elijah that was upon him, that is a witness to what Jesus said. So he comes as a witness. And of course, Mount Transfiguration shows both Moses and Elijah as a prefigure of the coming of the two witnesses, discussing his very death, burial, and resurrection. So they were watching it the entire time. Interesting, isn't it? And I think it's kind of interesting as well is that this event happens after the death of John the Baptist. Now, some might say, oh, you believe in reincarnation? No, that's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making is the Spirit, because the Bible says it was the Spirit of Elijah. He goes forth, and that was actually prophesied by the angel to John's parents, that he would go forth in this power and the spirit of Elijah. All right? There's where it is. It's the spirit of Elijah tabernacled in John's body. So this is what I'm looking at when I'm looking at these things here. Now, let's get into something, though, the Lord showed me that just blew me away. I was actually going to teach on Joseph, but it's a very in-depth subject. I've taught on this many times on Israeli News Live. If you go back in some of the old videos, if you were to type in like searches like, Israeli News Live, Joseph, or something like that. I don't know how you would type it in. But anyway, I'm going to do it anyway here. I'm going to bring it here to you guys fresh, even deeper, how Joseph is a type of Christ, how that, the putting of his cup inside of Benjamin's bag was a type, as I've taught many, many years ago. It was a type of the fact that Jesus would be rejected at the communion table, why they had their money in their sacks, and why they found it at the hotel on their way back, taking their grain back to their father. Well, it was showing that they would reject Jesus when he'd be in his mother's womb at the stable itself. And of course, the money being put back in the bag is because you can't buy your salvation, right? Not only that, the grain itself is important. Why the grain in the first place? And that's where we're going to get into a prophecy that has a compound fulfillment. Understand this now. I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that we're going to get into God multiplying the seed of Abraham as the sand of the seashore, or the stars that cannot be numbered, and speaking about his descendants. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. But we also know that God says, out of Egypt I call my son. And that was speaking, of course, of Israel coming out of bondage out of Egypt. But we also know the apostle said it referred to who? Jesus himself. Why? Because he went down into Egypt during the time that Herod was killing all the children. And yet he brought him back. And so out of Egypt I call my son had two fulfillments in biblical prophecy. Well, we're going to find out that Genesis is no different in chapter 22. Verse 17. Let's first read it. That in blessing I will bless thee. And this he's speaking to Abraham. He's just tried to offer up his son Isaac. The angel stays his hand and says, I see that you're willing to obey me. And no matter what it is, you're willing to obey me. And he says, don't harm him. See, because God was going to give his only begotten son, and he wanted to see if Abraham loved his son the way God would love his son. And so then he tells him, I will bless you and I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven and the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Now, you know what? This has the most unusual fulfillment besides that of the multiplying of the children of Abraham without number. And here's what's strange about this. In modern days, if we wanted to take a census of the world and find out who is Jews and everything, we could number the descendants of Abraham. As they say, for example, we have about 6 million Jews living inside of Israel. Not counting the Jews that are dispersed around the rest of the world, but even those, there's pretty much, they could tell you about how many that is. Now, I would think that the prophecy deals more with the fact of how many children Abraham has had over the last 3,500 years, being innumerable as far as the number of children. But also, as we see about the story of out of Egypt I call my son, and it has two fulfillments in prophecy, I believe that this very prophecy that he says that your seed shall possess the gate of their enemy, and it'll be innumerable as the sand of the sea. See, What did he say? And the sand which is upon the seashore, thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. All right, and I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed, your seed, shall possess the gate of his enemy. Let's take a look at something. I'm going to show you an amazing insight that the Holy Spirit revealed to me this morning before coming on air here to share with you that this was actually fulfilled in the time of Joseph as a compound fulfillment. Watch this. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Now remember, Joseph was sold out by his own brothers. The Ishmaelites got a hold of him. Midianites got a hold of him. You look at the book of Jasher, you find out why we have, it seems almost like a conflicting story in Genesis, but if you look at Jasher, it kind of clears it up. I think the Midianites pulled him out of the pit, and according to the book of Jasher, and the brothers stopped him and fixing to get into a battle, and they agreed to pay him. They gave the money for him, so they let him go. They got nervous about it, so they sold him off to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites come down into Egypt, and they sold him off to Potiphar as a slave. And of course, he's falsely accused, as Jesus was falsely accused, thrown into the pit, but he's still a prophet. He still sees visions, has dreams, understands things. Even the very fact that Joseph's visions about his mother and father and his brethren, you remember the moon and the sun and the 12 stars? And also the story of the sheaves, your sheaves bowed before me, my sheaf. Do you know that prophecy was never fulfilled? Oh yes, his brothers came, his father came, and they bowed before him. But his mother didn't come. She had died. Don't think it won't be fulfilled. It will. It will be fulfilled. All right? That's something a lot of people overlook. Simplicity, those little simple details that sometimes we don't look at. But it will, because the moon bowed as well. All right? Now, but at any rate, he's thrown in the pit. Now he's risen up because he interprets the dreams of the baker and the butler, as we know the story there. And I've always thought the butler was interesting because I think of Nehemiah when he's the king's cupbearer as well in the story of Nehemiah. And it makes a very interesting comment about Nehemiah that when he was troubled in his vision, and I'll go into that in another day there, but that it mentions that the king's wife was sitting beside him. That's an interesting story. I remember saying that to Chuck Missler, and I said, you ever think about that, Chuck? I said, that's actually a representation of your bride being at the side of the king. When what? When Israel has been ransacked and destroyed, and the walls are all broken down. And I remember Chuck saying, wow. He said, I never thought about it like that before. Maybe Chuck's taught on that since then. I don't know. But I shared that with Chuck many years ago. Anyway, so we find out, though, that Joseph has found favor in the sight of the Pharaoh of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt, and in the 7 plenteous years of the earth brought forth by handfuls, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, and the food of the field which was round about every city laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn, which that could be wheat, because just corn being like the grain of the seed. In fact, you could say seed here. Corn as the sand of the sea, very much until he left numbering, for it was without number. Think of that. Joseph gathered so much grain, so much seeds, as it were, that it was so much that it was as if it was the sand of the sea, that it was without number over that 7 years of plenty. How did Joseph possess the gate of his enemy? by the seed itself that God gave him to do in the vision, how to overcome Egypt. He overcome them by the seed itself. And by the knowledge that God gave that man, he overcame his own enemy of Egypt and become the master of all of Egypt by the seed. So when God says over here to Abraham, that in blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I'll multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven and the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemy. And Joseph does exactly that. He possessed the gate of his enemy. He became the second in command as the ruler of Egypt. He has given the daughter of Potiphar, the head priest of Egypt. He is controlling both religious and political circles, all because he controls the seed of Egypt. He multiplied his seed as the sand of the sea and dominated the world by doing so. Or the Egyptian kingdom, I should say. Not so much the world as well, because all the nations had to come to Egypt to get their grain. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I was blown away. I'm sitting here getting ready to talk about the fact that Joseph married Asenath as a type of Yeshua taking a Gentile bride. Which is kind of interesting in itself, because Yeshua doesn't actually go to the Gentiles. In fact, he says to his apostles, go only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. In other words, outside of Judah, only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Yeshua come for his own. It is Paul that takes the gospel and goes to the Gentiles, because Yeshua knew that it was going to go to the Gentiles. And he presents the Gentile as a bride to Christ. As Paul says, chaste, spot, a virgin without spot. Remember the little woman at the well. She comes to Jesus. Her daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. I think it's Matthew 15, something like that, chapter 15. And she says, my daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. She says, she's begging him, thou son of David. Well, she's a Canaanite. And not only that, the Canaanites are even a mingled people among the Nephilim. And Jesus says, it's not meet for me to give the children's bread to dogs. Now, I can't help but think that the reason why he called her people dogs was because of the mixing of the race, because this is what dogs do. They interbreed. But you know what? She had faith. Why? Because in her, she still was a remnant of Adam and Eve. And what did Jesus say? That she comes, she's working, of course she first worked on his apostles when he wouldn't hear her, because he didn't even answer her. Then she says to him what she said, and she cries out to him. And he says to her what he says about not meet for me to give the children's bread to you dogs. And then she says, but it's true, Lord, but the dogs eat the crumbs under the master's table. It shows that God loves and cares about humanity on this earth. And the Gentile was grafted in, just like Asenath. She was an Egyptian. Her people were the enemies of Israel. But she became grafted in, and her children became the tribes of Israel. Joseph was replaced by Ephraim. That's my own ancestor, Ephraim. I'm a descendant of Joshua, and of course Joshua is a descendant of Ephraim. Beautiful, beautiful story. So how did God possess the gate of his enemy? He did it with the sand of the sea. I mean, look at that prophecy. Now, this is something else that gets me. Notice it. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Now, naturally, Israel possessed the gate of his enemy, just the fact of the children itself. The wars that they were able to do and overcome the nations, his seed. But even at that time, we were not without number. Israel defeated many kingdoms, even in the times of David. But we were nearly not without number at that point there. Israel could still be numbered. David could defeat, though, the kingdoms. He possessed the gate of his enemy, so it has more than one fulfillment. But in the case of Joseph, he used the grains of the earth, the seed, to possess the gate of Egypt and overcome Egypt by his seed, a direct descendant of Abraham. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. I trust this is a blessing for you. Do remember us in your giving, if you would. We do need your help. Mainly because we're trying to keep the broadcast on TV as well. It is a combination effort of the Noon Institute and that of Israeli News Live that we are doing this broadcast to reach a group of people that we can not otherwise reach on YouTube. And we understand that a lot of these people are older people that are not as versed in the internet and being able to catch these insights. And I know they say that it goes into 20 million homes, but we know fact is there's not 20 million people watching by no means, but no doubt there are thousands and maybe tens of thousands that are able to view this live that maybe don't have that ability. And it's also, we have closed captioning on there as well that airs every Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we want to make sure that we can keep this blessing going for those people as well. And those of you that watch here on the Noon Institute, or you catch the prophetic insights on Israeli News Live. I'll put some of these links in the description below in case you're new to the Noon Institute and you're not aware of Israeli News Live or not aware that we're on TV in America. And by the way, not just America, anywhere in the world, you can watch that broadcast as well, because all you have to do is to go to World Harvest Television. Just type that into Google. You can find it. You can find where we're at there, and you can watch the broadcast from there on the internet as well. And if I'm not mistaken, in many countries in the world, you can watch it live. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You can donate if you'd like, going to israelinewslive.org or israelreturns.com. Also on Israeli News Live, if you happen to subscribe to our news feed there, just above the subscribe button is a donate link as well, if that makes it a little bit easier. We never put it here on the Noon Institute before, and as well we'll include here at the end of the broadcast our address. You'll see it appear here on your screen if you prefer to do that by mail. Thank you. God bless you. We will be, by the way, in the United States coming up here in August. I'll be speaking around the country. We've had some people invite us to come and speak. We'll try to see if we can go to some of these places. Can't sure I can make everything. We are hosting an event on August the 5th and 6th in Atlanta, Georgia. Another thing that we'll need help with, it is limited seating. 150 people is all we can seat here. And we are charging $25 for the event. It's a 2-day event. And we're trying to do that because Israeli News Live is bringing in Dr. Pidgeon and Zen Garcia, and of course ourselves, Laurel Austin. My wife will be speaking there as well. Be speaking on the subjects of vaccines, DNA, how it is biblically, prophetically, what these things are doing, how the government is trying to alter it. Dr. Steve Pidgeon and author Zen Garcia will be speaking on, or debating on the flat earth, whether or not the earth is flat or round. I have looked at the debate on flat earth. I've never personally myself have leaned into that direction, but that's just because I just haven't. As much as I looked into it, I'm not fully persuaded towards that. I know it's in the book of Enoch, and I think that's what's going to make it more interesting is Dr. Pidgeon is not for a flat earth, and yet he has been heavily involved as a scholar in the work of the book of Enoch and with the Sefer, the Et Sefer, the compilation of the different biblical books that were taken out of like the 1611 King James Bible. So he'll be there speaking as well. That'll be on the Saturday night of that event. And I'll speak that morning for a little bit on this DNA part. And on Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, I'll be going very deep into the prophecies of the Middle East and what's going on there. So we invite you to come, and we'll have a website up very soon here, and I'll get that back to you as soon as I can, where you can register on that. But again, even the $25 a ticket will not cover the cost that we're going to have to spend to get the people to the meeting and of course the facility, etc. So we're using just the tickets to kind of offset that cost, and then we'll just have to foot the bill for the rest of it. Anyway, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. I'm so glad we got the chance to speak with you today, and I trust that this has been a blessing for you about this the seed as a sand of the seashore. Share it with your friends and get people to come and listen. I think it'll be a blessing for them. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching the Noon Institute of Biblical Research. Shalom.